Hello, friends, and welcome to Service of Change's Changecast, your podcast for change. I'm your host, Dennis Nappi II, with Service of Change, where small changes among the masses can have a massive impact around the world. Tonight, I am human, and we are not who we think we are. Joel and I will be getting into my new book that just dropped last week. Really proud of it, really excited of some of the feedback I've gotten from some of my readers. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and kind of the story behind the story. But before I do that, let me get to my good friend, my partner in crime, my esteemed co-host, Joel the Provocateur Schaefer. Joel, what's going on tonight, dude?
Hey, Dennis, how are you?
Not too bad. I'm feeling kind of relaxed and chill today. I've been on spring break since about Tuesday, and it's been a tense couple of days. I'll tell you about in a minute. But today I'm feeling kind of calm. I was almost too calm to come on the show. I was so relaxed tonight.
Yeah, I sensed that when we talked pre-show.
Yeah. Normally I'm like rushing around, just jumping on the show, put the kids to bed, whatever, get ready, then prep for the show. And tonight I was like, I don't got much going on. It's a good thing. Well,
Definitely.
I don't want to say that I don't have much going on, but today I was kind of like, I'm going to pretend like I don't have much going on and just kind of take it easy. Like I said, I'm on spring break. My spring break got off to a bit of a rough start, man. I was at work, and where I was working, things weren't that bad. But back where I live, we got hit with a blizzard.
Yeah, I saw that. I thought it was
Yeah.
an April Fool's joke.
Yeah, right. It wasn't. It was crazy, man. So I left. I went home. I'm home. I got home about an hour earlier than I normally do, and my mom calls me. And as soon as I answer the phone, I heard it in her voice. What happened? She was in a car accident.
Oh,
Panicked. So I go flying through the icy roads to get there. Man, her car had flipped over, dude. Like,
wow.
let me tell you, man, she's lucky. She's definitely lucky. So if there's guardian angels, they're definitely watching over her that day, man. But that was what was that? That was Tuesday, and then Wednesday, I'm taking my mom to get the rental car and stuff, and I took both my kids with me to give my wife a break because she's always home with the kids and stuff. Dropped my mom off, and I'm like, all right. I told my son we're planting seeds, and he's got a bag. He's got a bag of beans, like Jack and the Beanstalk. So I told him we're gonna go to the store. We're gonna get some bean dirt, and we can plant your beans. And he's all excited about it. So we're in the car. I'm driving, going, all right, we're going to get bean dirt. And go get bean dirt, Daddy. And all of a sudden, my daughter just starts like screaming, crying, and she's a bit of a drama queen. So I'm like, whatever, dude. She's gonna scream. I'm gonna ignore it. Turn my radio up a little bit louder. 2 minutes later, I pull into the parking lot, and the smell hit me in the face. And it's one of those moments where I went, I hope that's something in the parking lot and not what I think it is. So I pull over, I open the back door, and I look at my daughter, who's hysterical, and she's got the thickest, chunkiest, like pink noodle vomit everywhere, just everywhere, dude, like all over her. I had just put her new car seat in 20 minutes prior, all over it. It was a mess, dude. It was a total mess. My son's sitting there going, "We go get bean dirt now." I'm like, "Nah, dude, we're going home, man. I'm sorry." So she was sick, and that was, the rest of the day just spiraled downhill from there.
Is she feeling better?
Yeah, dude. Honestly, like I took her home. I gave both kids a bath, and then she just wanted to run around and play. So I'm like, what the heck was that? You throw up and you want to play, and then but her fever keeps going up and down. So I don't know what was going on with her, but she threw up in my car. Pretty much the same thing my son did when he was the same age. He threw up. I wrote an article on the blog about it about a year and a half ago when he did it. It was pretty funny, but that's rough, man. When the kids throw up in the car, whoo, not a fun thing.
Does the car still smell?
No, it was all on her in the car seat. None of it got
Okay.
on my car. When my son did it, though, it went everywhere. So that my car stunk for about a week. But yeah, this time my car doesn't stink. But that was a moment where it was like, there was so much vomit. I'm usually pretty calm in those situations, but I was like, I don't know what to do. Do I go in the back and get the paper towels? Then what? Then it's going to be all over me, and I got to drive home. She had a blanket on her, so I wiped it off her face and just put the blanket on the floor, and I was like, we're just going home. I'm not going to bother cleaning you in this parking lot.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a I don't know what to do moment. So not a fun day. But yeah, kids, man, they test you in all sorts of ways. So what else? What's shaking with you, dude? Enough of my throw-up stories.
I got punched by a customer the other night.
Oh, Joel, I saw that you threw a couple of things up on social media that I wanted to respond to, and I just never got around to it.
No, I understand. You're busy.
How was that? Well, I should have responded to that. I'm
No,
sorry, I
it's
didn't.
okay.
I really
No, it's
should have.
okay.
But I remember reading that and thinking, wow, Joel, I'm proud of you for handling it the way you did. But go ahead for our listeners, man. Tell us about this.
Well, I took a delivery. It's like right around the corner from me, but my neighborhood is kind of like might be like the worst neighborhood we deliver to, and like there was no phone number because the new girl didn't like put a phone number, so my hackles were rising, like my spidey sense of danger was up. So I pull up and I see a guy standing on the porch, and I'm like, oh, good, like he's standing on the porch. It's not likely I'm gonna get robbed.
Right.
So I walk up to the porch, and the older woman comes out, and the guy's like my age, maybe a little older. And this woman comes out and tells him, don't say anything to him, telling the guy not to say anything to me. And I'm like, oh, what is this? And so she starts to like get her money out, and he goes, why is my food 45 minutes? And like, I have a prepared thing for that because I used to always be terrified of that happening, but this is not really my call. Like my boss, like it's my boss's call. Like he needs more people, or he needs to not send people home, or he needs to tell them it's going to be 45 minutes. Like it's not on me. Like I don't intentionally, like I work for tips and for delivery charges. I don't get paid by the hour. So there's no good reason for me to like stall getting people's food to their house. So I'm just like, you can call my manager. And the lady's like, well, he's drunk. So that inflamed him more. I'm like, you can call my manager. And maybe I said it slightly dismissively because I'm just like, I've been trying lately. Like, my job is too hard for me to like cater to you. Like, this is not a big deal. Like, if you don't want the food, I can take it back, or you can call and maybe he'll give you a discount for later, which he will. Like, you don't need to take it out on me because you're having a bad day. Like, I'm just not even going to play with it anymore. And then he started calling me like a pussy and a punk and other curse words, and he said he was going to F me up and beat my ass. And so I was like, dude, keep threatening me and I'm going to call the police on you. And that made him even more angry. Right. So honestly, I mean, I kind of minimized this for social media, although now it's going to be on the podcast. But I did at one point like back away and just be like, I'm like, well, come on. And I didn't mean it like, come on, I want to fight you. I meant like, if you keep threatening me, like, I'm not going to, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to run away. I'm not going to attack you either. And he took that because he was drunk as an invitation to fight. So he comes down and he doesn't even, I just have my hands up, like, to defend if he's going to punch me. And he doesn't, for like most of the interaction, he never swings. He just keeps barreling towards me. And so, like, I'm just backing up, waiting for him to swing on me. And then I'll fight back if I have to. And then he's taunting me for backing away. Why are you backing away? Like, basically calling me a coward. And I'm like,
I don't want to get hit. That's why.
Yeah, like, but I will defend myself if you hit me. And then finally he did like swing, but he like barely grazed me. And then the woman came down and got him away from me. So then I called the police and I was like, this is unacceptable. Like, and I was surprised because lots of times in these situations, the police don't really, what they'll do is they'll just write up the information. And then later I can go press charges. Right. But this time, because they didn't come to the scene. They came to eat at my restaurant, and then my boss was out there, and he saw them, and then we went back, and they identified him, and they were like, I was like, I don't really want to, like, hurt this guy, but this is just wrong. Like, I wasn't doing anything wrong, and he kept threatening me, and then he, like, hit me. You know what I mean? Like, and they're like, well, just jam him up. Like, you don't deserve this. And then I thought about it, and he was up there saying that I invited him to fight, and all he did was ask me a question and all this other stuff, and he's never been arrested. And they were like, well, why didn't you call the police if he wanted to fight you? I'm not a snitcher or a rat, which is so ridiculous because if you've never been arrested, like you're not in the game, you're not in the illegal game. So like this snitch and rat thing doesn't apply to you. Like I'm a civilian. Like I have a right, like, because if I don't call the police, then I need to take things in my own hands. I don't want to take things in my own hands because I'm a law-abiding citizen. So the police are my recourse. So to call me a snitch means that I would have to like beat you up and then go to jail, like, which is ridiculous. So that whole snitch rat thing doesn't apply to me. It applies to criminals who then use the law. Right. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I hear you.
Anyway, but so then finally I was just like, just make him apologize or ask him to apologize. And he apologized, which kind of contradicted his whole story that he didn't do anything wrong to the police. Like, why would you be apologizing? And we went on our way. But I was happy that I didn't really care about that. I mean, honestly, I felt guilty that I didn't hit him back. But honestly, like my natural thing is that like I really don't want to hurt anybody unless they're hurting me first.
Yeah, Joe, I'm the same way, man. You know, I've been in a lot of situations where it's like, ooh, I see that opening. Ooh, I've always wanted to try that, but it's like, but this, even though the guy's hitting me, it doesn't warrant that move or that. You know what I mean? Like, I'll
Yeah,
just put you on the ground and hold you there because I
yeah,
know I'm capable of that. I don't have to hurt you in the process. I don't want to hurt somebody. You know, I
yeah.
really don't. And I'm not saying I'm some lethal weapon. You know, I mean,
No, no.
there's
You well,
always
you
somebody
know
bigger
better
and
than I
better.
do. Like, I honestly, I'm not that good at it, but at least I was able to defend myself. Like, you didn't
Yeah,
hurt me. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Like,
that's good.
I'm tall and I had my hands up, and I just kept backing up, and he wasn't able to get anything in on me. So it
Yeah,
was like, this is pointless. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, you
yeah.
said you were going to beat me up, and then you tried to, and you couldn't. So it's like, I win. You know what I
Right,
mean? Like,
man.
I don't
And
have to win by hurting you. I can win by not allowing you to hurt me.
and that's wisdom right there, man. You know,
But
you
that's
win.
a new thing for me because for years it was always well because even there were some guys in the background yelling, "Give him a 2-piece."
Yeah, yeah.
You know
Like,
what I mean? Like I'm supposed to hit him, or I don't know if they were yelling at him to hit me. I don't know, but
right, right.
there's this idea that I was a coward because I just didn't really want to hit him. I didn't want to.
But I think that I think from the outside looking in, when I see somebody who isn't backing down but isn't
Yeah.
swinging,
Yeah.
I think that makes you look like the tough guy. You know, but like
Okay.
what's he holding back on? And you see that. Now, I don't promote World Star at all. I think that
Right.
site should be
Right.
taken down. But every so often, those videos come across my Facebook feed, and they're like 10 seconds long, or quick, and you see a lot of guys backing up, getting bullied. Like, I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight. And then the one dude throws that wild hook and misses, and then the dude just takes an opportunity and boom, clocks him once, and he's down. You know, and I think that's
And I think that if the dude had kept it up, or if the woman hadn't come, I think probably like I don't know because I haven't been in
right.
a real fight for so long. But because he was drunk and he obviously had no technique, or he was abandoning all technique, because
Yeah,
he didn't even have his hands up. Like
right.
I had my hands up guarding my face, and I'm not a
Right.
boxer, but it was just like
Common
obviously that's
sense,
what
at
you got to
least.
do. Yeah, and
Right.
so yeah, he probably would have ended up getting hurt, and I'm glad I didn't hurt him. I'm glad it didn't
Yeah.
come to that. Because for
It's not
what?
worth it. It's not worth
Yeah,
it
for what?
because he's
Over
mad at you
pride?
over being late. No, he just wanted to fight. He was just drunk and angry.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you made the right call, dude. You're a better man for it. And
Thank
it
you.
sounds like I think that if you would have hit him, you would have had more anxiety about that.
I think you're right. I probably
You
would
know?
have felt guilt over it. Yeah.
Yeah, you feel pretty good because you still walked away realizing you controlled that situation.
Yeah.
You may have been dictating certain things, but you had control of it. You did the right thing.
Yeah, I didn't run away, even though
Yeah.
legally I did tell the cops, I'm like, maybe I should have ran away, but it was kind of hard to run away because technically you turn your back on somebody.
But
Well, I
but
could have
did
ran away.
You did. In the eyes of the law, you did run away because you told me right there. Like if I was taking that police report, I was backing up and he kept advancing. So as a cop, I wouldn't expect you to turn your back and run.
Okay,
But
fair
you were
enough. Okay,
retreating,
thank you.
trying to get to a safe spot, and he
Yeah.
kept pursuing you. I
Well,
wouldn't.
when I said come on and stood my ground, that was an opportunity I could have left, technically. But anyway, next time I'll get to that level. I wasn't there yet. It was like I got frustrated out because I tried to tell him to call my manager. I tried to say, listen, don't threaten me. And then he kept making threats and I got frustrated. So
Right.
which is human. It might not be ideal, but it's still human.
You know, speaking of which, as we're talking, not to downplay that, but I'm sitting there going,
No.
okay, great conversation. How are we going to segue this to my
I just
book?
said I'm human.
And then as I'm thinking that, you said I'm human, and I'm like, oh my
There we
God,
go.
synchronicity of the universe, and it ties into the subject of the book. Awesome, man. That was pretty awesome coincidence right there. But you know, I do want to talk about my book a little bit tonight. But I want to make sure you're good. You're good with you know, your story.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Thank you for
And I'm glad you
allowing
stayed.
me to share it and giving me your insight.
And I'm going to give a public apology to you again, Joe. I am sorry because you put another comment up there about something that I posted on social media. You put a lot of thought into it, and I never responded to you. It's one of those things like I get social media just blows up, and then next thing you know, oh, I'll respond to that in 10 minutes, and then
It moves.
3 days
It actually
go by.
moves too fast
Yeah,
sometimes.
and then things are gone, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I know I got to get to it somewhere. So there was like two or three things you put up there over the past like week or two. So I'm sorry.
No, I respect your. I think you have an ethic that like encourages you to like give something its proper due rather than just rattling off anything. So I
Well,
know that
thank you.
that's why. Yeah, I know that that's part of the thinking behind it.
It is, but I think I should have been a little quicker getting back to some of your stuff over the last week. But sorry, I'm in public with my apology here for you, John. I
Nah, it's
sincerely mean
okay.
that. Sincerely mean that. All
So
right, so
let's talk about this.
yeah, let's talk about I Am Human, and I've got to say to my readers out there, thank you. There's nothing more humbling than getting feedback from people that have read the book, and the things I'm getting are, man, I've thought about that stuff exactly. I had somebody hit me up today, another author hit me up, and he said, as I'm reading this, I could have been the one writing it because it captures a lot of the thoughts and feelings I've had, and as an author, I'm so thankful that people are making a connection with this book, and it's just a 48 page 5x8 book. It's a real quick read. But I think that in those 48 pages, it does pack a pretty powerful connection to people and message to people. So I just want to start that off by thanking, my readers out there for not only reading it, but for reaching out to me and giving me some feedback. So, and I'll have a little promo going tomorrow. So to our subscribers to the secret newsletter, which you can get at serviceofchange.com/IamHuman. I'm giving away an autographed copy. If you go onto Amazon.com and submit a review, I'll write down all the names, put them in a hat, and draw a random name out of it, and send an autographed copy of the paperback of I Am Human to you or to anybody that you choose. So look in your inboxes tomorrow. If you're not a member, it's free to sign up. Just go to servicechange.com/IamHuman and sign up, and you'll be able to get to read the book for free as well. So that's my promo pitch for the book. But anyway, let's get into this book here, and I guess the way this started. If you remember I was talking about the archons a few months ago.
Yes.
So
Yep.
I'm writing this book, and the book that I'm writing it's a full, a lot longer than 48 pages, and I started writing it. I want to say last winter time frame, and the real inspiration for this book came from my dad dying. I put an article about it on Facebook on his birthday. The day this book launched was 3/27/15. That would have been my dad's 60th birthday, and this all ties into my father and what I saw when he passed, and it was a horrible thing to see. Death is never a pretty thing, but it's not. Let me just lay down and go to sleep, and I'm never going to wake up again. I mean, what my father went through was he suffered, and that
Yeah.
was very difficult, for anybody to witness, but
Yeah.
being his son, and it was kind of the last straw for me, as the things I've seen as a soldier and as a police officer, and some of the teaching experiences I've had. Like, I've seen some of the sadder aspects of life and of society,
Yeah.
but it never. I mean, I've even had hardship in my own life, but never to that. Never watching your dad, suffer and die like that. So I've had these experiences and these thoughts, and I guess when my dad died, spiritually, I realized that the worst case scenario in my head is possible, and that's that we're not necessarily alone, and that there may be a greater force out there that has a negative influence over us and is using us for its own gain.
Mm.
And that's not the whole concept of this book, but that was kind of what really motivated me to keep exploring this possibility. So I started doing research and realized, hey, I'm not the first one to think this. There's a lot of references to this throughout history, to include modern history, ancient history, with different terms. And we've talked about this in other shows. So I started writing this book talking about my childhood experiences and experiences of my family, where we've realized, hey, things aren't everything that you see. There's more to what is going on with our life than we see. We'd wake up in the middle of the night and things would be going bump in the night. And I'd be in my room, my brother be in his room, my parents be in their room, and the next morning I'd be like, did something happen last night? And
Mm-hmm.
everybody would be like, yeah, we had a weird night last night, or we'd all had some kind of strange dream. Sometimes we wake up with these strange symmetrical marks on us with no explanation to them. So a lot of this stuff ties into, a lot of the abduction scenarios and stuff. Now, I'm not purporting that this is alien abduction. I don't
Right.
necessarily think that's what's going on. But
But it's
those,
similar in some of the,
well,
the initial parts of an abduction.
well, I don't even know that. I think it might even be the same experience, but I'm not going
Right,
to go as
right,
far as to say
right.
that this is something alien. This may be something natural to Earth.
Right, right. Other people label it that way, but
Right. And I always
and
admire
they're
Whitley
free to
Strieber
do
for
that,
that.
but that's not the tack you're taking.
Right. I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm open to that possibility,
Right.
but, like Whitley Strieber still says it. He says, look, I call them the visitors, and I don't know that they're alien. He said
Yeah.
he's even theorized that, hey, maybe it's an extension of humanity, of ourselves. I don't know what they are. So I've always admired that he keeps that open mind and has tried to make sure he's not making a stance either way of what it is. And that's kind of the approach that I try to take. But that's just such a small piece of this. And
Right.
I said in the beginning of the book, I'm not trying to spread fear, but I would like to get people thinking about those things that are scary, because until we face our fears, we're never going to be able to find a way to overcome them. So it's not a fear mongering book.
Right.
It's a book more that I hope inspires reflection of who we are. And I go into, I guess, my initial journey of trying to understand myself and my relationship to the world and to the universe on multiple levels. So and back in, I guess, what started this I Am Human project. Where was I? Well, let me go back. I'm writing this book, this whole thing of my whole family's experiences, my life experiences, and I'm tying in research and all these other books that I've read about it and stuff. And it just hit me one day, like, I need to do a shorter version, kind of a preview of this larger book, and I need to give it away for free. It was just kind of my
Mhm.
intuition telling me that, just my gut instinct of what needed to be done. So I did. So in a weekend, I wrote this book, and then it took about 3 months to get ready, and to put out, and the rest is history. So this version of I Am Human starts with, I guess, a late night that I had where I couldn't sleep because I had a whole bunch of stuff running through my head, and it kind of gave me an insight into the surrounding world. Am I talking too much? I feel like I'm rambling right now, Joel. No, you doing all right?
Yeah, yeah, I'm listening. I
Okay.
like last week, like there's always like I can take something you said and I'm like, ooh, 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 but I'm like waiting. I'm gonna wait
Okay.
before I like jump in.
I just want to make sure I'm not rambling too much. Um, but let me jump into this essay, and then maybe that's a
Sure.
good spot for me to stop, and then you can give your thoughts or feedback. But so after all that stuff's been going on my whole life, and before my dad died in 2009, I was really kind of exploring this stuff and pondering this stuff, and I'm laying in bed one night, and I just couldn't sleep. I had like adrenaline running through me, and I had so many thoughts coming in, and actually they were starting, and the way I describe in the book, more as feelings, intuition coming in through through my heart, as the only way I can describe it. It burned in my
Mm-hmm.
chest, and then my head was trying to understand, translate these feelings into thought, into words. It
Mm-hmm.
was just overwhelming me, so it made no sense to me. So finally, I was like, all right. I got out of bed, ran down the hall to my office, and I started writing stuff down. And I just expected like random thoughts to be coming out, and it came out into this clear, concise essay that explained, um, I guess, my perception of humanity, which isn't, we're the top of the food chain, and God loves us and He's protecting us, and we're going to go to heaven, and everything's going to be okay. And it wasn't that at all.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, hey, we're not at the top of the food chain. We're part of a greater system, and things aren't always pretty for us. And then I, looked at several examples in life, and my main, I guess, concept was, well, if God created us and God created everything, life requires life in order to survive. And that was the basis for my essay and my understanding of the world around us, and it just kind of grew from there. The more I read it, even what do we at 6 years later, I'll still get more understanding from that essay as I go through and read it. And that's the final chapter of I Am Human. You can actually read that full essay there and see what I was talking about there. Let me take a pause there and give you a chance to respond or speak.
Well, when you were first talking about death, I thought
Mhm.
of my mother's experience with her father, and her father had a very painful death from cancer as well, and my mother has never recovered. And
Mhm.
My mother has other problems. God bless her. She has a lot of good things about her too, and a lot of great things she's done throughout her life. But she has some other issues too. But a lot of like the pat response to the fact that she would claim to people that she was not over her father's death, even it was 2003. So beginning 7 years afterwards, beginning like 5 years ago, some people in the family or other people would suggest that she should just be over it by now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's unfair.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's not a true statement to make, that there is a timeline for grief,
right,
because of some of the things that you talk about in your work here about the nature of existence, and so much suffering is built into existence. And I still remember at my grandfather's funeral, and I was, I'm much more religious now, or much more, I don't want to say I'm religious, but I'm more empathetic to Christianity specifically, but just to religion in general, than I was back then. But the pastor was doing the little eulogy or something in the church service before we went to do the burial. And he started saying that my grandfather wasn't afraid to die.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother had told me that he was afraid to die. And my father got embarrassed by me because I was in a stage in my life where I didn't really care about what people thought of me. And maybe that was wrong. I was too far in that extreme where I didn't care what people thought, where I might even offend people. I don't do that now. I would pick my battles to stand up to people, even if it made them uncomfortable. I pick them more carefully now than I would back then. Back then, I would just start shaking my head like rigorously. And everybody in the place must have seen me shaking my head. Like, this is ridiculous. This does the disservice to my grandfather's memory. This is a lie. You didn't even know him to make that statement, to say that he wasn't afraid to die.
Right.
He was.
Right.
He was. And so that leads me also to this other thing that how your work appeals to me, in terms of, I've often thought about this idea that a lot of times people are broken down at whether they believe in God or they don't believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do believe in God, it seems to be a convenient belief in God that that allows them to think of a creator who loves us, like you describe in the work. And I've often thought, well, maybe there's a God, but he doesn't love us. So in other words, maybe there's forces larger than us that get called God, but maybe they aren't benign. And that's the other thing. I often have argued with people about the nature of belief, and a lot of them, and there's an element of truth to this, a lot of them are like, well, Christians only believe in God because it promises you an afterlife. And there's an element there, but that's not always the case. That might just be part of the reason. Like, you can't always just say there's one motive for belief. There's a variety of motives for belief.
Right, everybody has their own reason.
Yeah, and it might be a bunch of reasons. That might be part of the reason, but it's not the only reason. So, but I thought about it. The people who believe in an atheistic, naturalistic, mechanical world where the type of things that you're discussing, maybe they exist, but until they can be proven by science, they might as well not exist. There's a value, there's a convenience to that belief as well. Because guess what? We're the top of the food chain, like you said.
Yeah.
We're the masters of the universe. We're the most intelligent creatures that we have perceived to have as of yet, who have ever existed. And we don't have to be afraid of being tortured in the afterlife. Right. All we have is here and now. And in some ways, that might be a relief to somebody.
Trust me, Cypher said it in The Matrix, ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
I said it in my essay. Was he right? I mean, in a lot of cases, yeah. I used to love when I didn't think about this stuff. Now, but once you walk down that path, you can't unknow it. You can't forget it. But yeah, you raise a really good point, Joel.
And we were talking about that in the pre-show that like, and I think this is an important thing that you kind of rip the veil off. And I understand where this comes from, because it's part of survival skills. Like, psychological survival skills involve a kind of denial of the most dark and the most brutal aspects of our existence. Like, you can't really function if you entertain these things. I mean, I've had to put them aside often, or try to outlet them through what we do, or if I'm going to explore them, I have to explore them in a way where I'm almost holding hands with other people, or I'm holding hands with some kind of spiritual practice that's going to help me handle this stuff, because I want to be able to go to work. I'm like, why even go to work when there's all this suffering? Why even go to work when I'm just going to suffer and die and get old? I should just give up right now. Why not just go be a homeless person? Why not go back to doing drugs? You know what I mean? All these, and obviously I have a moral obligation to the people around me. But part of that moral obligation might be to like engender or bring on some of this healthy like denial. It's not either healthy or unhealthy. It depends on the extent to which. But I think most people just want to exist in a healthy denial, and that might do them a disservice. So that kind of is like what I'm interested in. And I don't want, in terms of your work, and I don't want you to give up too much away, but I kind of, when I was thinking about like what the show would be, I was thinking about, well, what benefit do we, like, what's next after acknowledging that these forces, these archons might exist? Like, what's next in terms of dealing with that reality? Like, without like giving too much away, like, what would you say about that?
I don't have all of the answers. And
Sure.
when I started this project, it was strictly a project to open people's minds to consider, hey, this thing's out there, and I have an answer for you, and I'll get to it in a second. But
Sure.
I was in a state of despair, and I was panicked, dude, because my dad couldn't die. Like I just, that's what kept going through my head, is like, why isn't he dead yet? Like, he would stop breathing for way too long, and all of a sudden he's coming back.
You would have to tell him to let go. You had to tell him to let go.
We kept telling him, and so I knew, based on my intuition and people can obviously argue with it, and that's fine. They weren't there.
Right.
I knew there was something else going on there, and if there wasn't, there should have been a divine presence that allowed him to go peacefully. My dad was a good man. These are the thoughts that I'm having. And am I biased? Absolutely, I'm biased. It was my father, and I love the man. But I walked away from it going, this is bad. So I felt hopeless. I felt if that can happen to my father on his deathbed, there's no hope. There's no one out there looking out for us. So that's how I walked away from that. I don't really feel that way right now. I'm able to step away from that. The emotions aren't raw anymore. So I want to make that quite clear. This isn't a doom and gloom book. It's the start of, again, maybe a different line of thought for some people. For the people that have already been down this path, the feedback I'm getting from them is, you're spot on. Like, this is exactly what I've been thinking about, or what I've experienced. But this is a good start if you want to start to understand this stuff. I do have some ideas and concepts. I don't know how I'm going to work them in yet, but there's hope for us. That's my point. And I said it in the beginning of this book here. Maybe I can just read a direct quote, but it's in the introduction. The time for evolution has passed, and we have lost. Our resistance now has new meaning, and it is an internal battle of self. Have the courage to look within. You may be surprised with what you find in the clarity of the world around you. We do have an ability, a natural ability, to connect spiritually and influence our reality in such a powerful way, but we've forgotten how to do that. We've forgotten how to use that. And I'm a mere amateur at this understanding. I'm standing on the shoulders of other people that I respect greatly as researchers in saying that. But I've experienced enough myself to know what they're saying is true. So, and this isn't a new age, and I said it there. It's not surrounding yourself with love and light, which may have value in certain spots. But, I'm a big fan of Greg Braden, who brings out the science that proves a lot of, the benefit of things like meditation and Tai Chi and energy work and healing and thought and intent influencing our reality. There's scientific research that's documented and peer reviewed that he has spoken about that just blows my mind. That gives me the hope that yes, this negative stuff exists as a part of our existence, but instead of it being this horrible demonic force that has us at its mercy, I now look at it like, well, there's a parasite, and we just got to find the right pill to take to flush the parasite out of our system. That's kind of my understanding of things now. But because we don't even acknowledge that, hey, I've got a tapeworm, we're not even going to try to treat it. So until we can sit there and say, hey, there may be some things I understand, there may be something that's affecting me on a spiritual level, then until we acknowledge that, well, then you're going to continue to be affected by this. And when you think about it, what if there was, I posted something on our Truth Seekers Facebook feed the other day, and it was about, and this research tied into the next book, the Archons book, to try to show people that, hey, parasites and mind control exist. And this article shows several examples of parasites that get into the brain of various different creatures. Whether it's wasps inject something, into various insects that they consume. There's a parasite that affects ants, birds, rats, and what it does is it changes the behavior of these creatures, of these insects or animals, and causes them to sometimes kill themselves,
Hmm.
sometimes put themselves in a situation that would allow their predator to eat them. So it causes them to react differently or to cause suffering to themselves. Why? Because the animal that eats them is necessary for this for the life cycle of this parasite, because the eggs are then born in the gut of this animal. The animal then excretes feces that's then eaten by the victim, and then the cycle goes through again. Excuse me. So there's a mind control element that's going on there, or an influence over the behaviors of these animals. And these are parasites. And you can watch this on a Discovery Channel. This stuff actually happens. So why do we sit here and say, well, that can't happen to us, when look at the rates of suicide right now, look at the rates of suffering and abuse and just horrible decisions that cause the suffering of mankind. Really, we're going to make these decisions that are cause these people to starve. That's a horrible thing when we have enough food to feed the planet. So
Right, right, right.
I think that there is some type of parasite that has impacted mankind on a wide scale, to promote that suffering, because its life cycle is required for. Now, whether it's actually feeding off the energy that comes off of people, like I suggest, or there's some other stage that it gets, its life cycle out of, I don't know. Um, I can speculate in both directions, obviously, but when you just think about it that way, it doesn't make sense why people are so messed up and why people promote the suffering and the hardship. And you just look at mental health. I mean, it's a mess right now, and nobody's really doing anything good about it to help, on a large scale anyway, to help these people. They're just giving them more drugs, which just mask the symptoms that these people are having, and in some cases mess them up even more. So, I mean, that's a whole different subject, but I really think that there's a piece that we're missing, that we're not looking at here, that causes these issues. And I think that ties into everything. I think that's the core issue for so many of the problems that we see on this planet. And that's what, some of these Gnostic texts talk about, is that there's this predator that has us convinced and influenced to do these certain things because it gains nourishment from us based on human suffering. The world made a lot more sense to me when I saw that. Like I said, it initially panicked me, but now I'm at a point where it's like, you know what? I'm not afraid anymore. I'm optimistic, because once I identify you, well, not me, but once we as a species identify you, well, now we can find a way to starve you, and that's what I'm looking at, and I'm very hopeful with that. And like, there's researchers that are far greater than me. I'm new to the game, in that aspect, but who have some very fantastic, some great ideas, and I think that we can move forward, and that's where change is going to come about. I think that's the core cause of the problem, and in my experience and opinion, right now, I may feel differently in a year, but as of right now, that's kind of how I stand. How crazy does that sound?
No, I don't think it sounds crazy. I was thinking as I was listening to you that, like, often the extreme Christians are kind of ridiculed for kind of like, it's almost like they're over optimistic. And I
Right.
get the criticism, because it's just like, oh, God's in control, everything's going to be all right, and his plan will work out. And it's just like, it's almost like childlike. And often people like mock it. It's like, well, it's a fairy tale, or it's like,
Uh huh.
a bedtime story you tell your kids. But on the other side, the more atheist, or at least non-religious, materialists who have science as their god, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
in some ways they're almost naive about the possibilities of like what you're describing, or
Mm-hmm.
they're just over optimistic about the ability of just like the typical tactics we've taken to kind of like, tackle our worst kinds of suffering. Like you talked about, like, oh, we'll give somebody like medicine or medication, and
Right.
often medication works. Or we'll just, if we feed the hungry, like, they won't become criminals. but
Yeah.
then still some of them become criminals or whatever.
Right.
Or you have criminals who are well fed from the begin with. You know, they're not poor
Right.
people. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you have irrational suffering. And like one of like my experiences having like dealt with people who have mental health problems and addiction problems, it's like it is so disturbing to like talk to somebody who, you know, you talk to them one day and they're like in the midst of like their addiction and they're just like totally oblivious. Like looking back, you look back and like my ex who died, like she was totally oblivious to the danger she was facing. Like she seemed totally oblivious to the fact that she could be dead, and she ended up dead like 2 weeks later.
Right.
It was just like it's irrational. It's like she was like what you described. It was like she was subject to forces beyond her control, and people were just like, "Well, she was in denial. She was just like."
They blame her.
Yeah, and it's like I still remember one of the last times I actually saw her in the flesh, and she was just glorifying like North Philly and talking about how it's like everybody looks out for each other. When the cops come, they're like all, and it was like she was like so in awe of like going up there and shooting heroin all day.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, Dennis, I got such despair come over me. Like, yeah, I could not describe it. Like, it was just this like. My soul sunk to the floor.
I understand that. Yep.
Like I was just like this, and because I knew there was nothing I could do. I couldn't talk her out of that.
Because it wasn't her, you know.
Yeah.
It's not. And Joel, that reminds me, like when my dad was sick, and I've heard this a lot. They call it, what is it, chemo brain, you know, or cancer brain, because we did a lot of research, and there's cures to cancer, you know, and I've come across enough stuff with these alternative cures, and seeing what like the FDA has done to shut that stuff down. That's a whole different episode. But my father wasn't him. It was as if he would become possessed at certain points, because we found, hey, Dad, if you eat these foods, your chances will be greater. Your suffering will be less. And he fought us. I'm not going to eat that. The doctor said I'm going to be fine. You know, and he was refused. And I remember looking at him going, this guy is possessed. And it reminds me now of reading about what a parasite does to its victim's brain.
Yeah.
You know, the amoeba that gets into the rat's brain from the cat feces causes the rat to wander out in the open instead of hiding in the shadows, so the cat eats it so it can lay its eggs inside the cat's intestine. I'm looking at my dad going, you're killing yourself. We're telling you here, you know, this stuff's bad. We know you believe us when you're having your lucid moments, but then when it's time to eat, it's like your eyes gloss over and you get mad and you're refusing this food. It was as if my father was possessed, you know. And I mean, throughout history, they talked about, the Catholic Church acknowledges possession exists, you know. So it's a real event, but we say, oh, it's in the movies, that stuff doesn't exist. No, that stuff happens. And I think on an even greater scale, you know, if you buy into some of the other talks we've had on consciousness, how thought influences reality, and, you know, some of the other stuff we've talked about, how, you know, your consciousness can create matter. That's the basis for matter and creation, and influences it, which on a quantum level has been proven already. What if there are these energetic things and they manifest as cancer, as a virus, or as a disease? You know, what if cancer does have its own consciousness when it comes into your human body? You know, I would like to see people explore that, because it took over my father's brain, and you know, and it caused him to make certain choices as far as, hey, eat healthier, Dad, you know, and he just couldn't do it, and it made no sense to me. I walked away from really puzzled, and maybe I'm just looking for something to blame because I miss my dad. That could be a possibility, but at the same time, I'm a pretty good investigator, and I'm pretty good at, you know, staying objective, and I have to explore that possibility, because I've seen too much evidence, circumstantial, but too much evidence for me to deny that, oh, my dad was just losing it. I think there was more to it, and I've seen too much. So that's what, you know, I Am Human kind of opens the door for you. If you know, read that book. If you think I'm crazy, read it's free. servicetochange.com/I Am Human. I mean, if you want to buy the hard copy, $6.99 on Amazon, I'd love it. But just sign up, you know, for the newsletter, and you'll get it almost immediately to your inbox. You can read it for free in a PDF. You know, you could probably read it in about an hour. And if you're interested, well, you know, Food for the Archons is coming out, hopefully, you know, next March. And I'll be presenting a lot more personal experiences and, you know, evidence from other researchers and authors and experiencers out there to try and kind of tie this all together. But I think we definitely need to start thinking about that possibility, that there's more out there. Not just there's more to us than we realize, but there's more to existence than we currently accept and understand. You know?
Well, yeah, and I think that that's, if you read like postmodern philosophy, I mean, what they talk about is that truth is a narrative, it's an account. Now,
Mm-hmm.
they will concede that there's like obviously stuff that's like just empirically proven. Like if you throw something up in the air, it's going to fall. Like that's gravity. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, if you put these two chemicals together, they're going to have a chemical reaction.
Right.
But when you're talking about things that like aren't measurable, like in that way, you
Present
start to
day.
have to
Right.
you start to have to give an account.
Yeah.
And we tend to privilege other certain accounts over others. And
Right.
why? Like, why
Right.
privilege this one account over the other? And like, I do concede that, the religious account, one kind of religious account in Western civilization and our history, our American history or our European history, has been privileged unfairly. But at the same time, then we go to the other extreme, or some people do, and just like, oh, well, that's totally nonsense. And then they just privilege that there is no real account for any of this stuff. This is all just pointless.
Mm-hmm.
This is all just, we're just animals, and we just suffer because that's just built in, and there's no rhyme or reason to it, and all we can do is hope to just control it through science and through our logic and reason.
And that's what we want to do, is we want to know that we want to control the situation, to understand that, at least for me, everything's okay. I'm not alone, and somebody loves me. Like, that's what I want to know. And as I've gone through this, when I realized that Catholicism isn't my path, and I'm not knocking, I'm not saying it's not anyone's path.
Right.
I went through a major depression because I said, wow, the world's not what I thought it was. What I was told, in my opinion, God doesn't love me. He doesn't care about me. Like, that's kind of what I went through. And it was devastating for me. But I kept pushing. I've never stopped this search, and I encourage people to do that. And I think the reason why so many of us don't is because, as a part of that journey, as a part of the unlearning process, you got to kind of wipe your slate clean and then start relearning again. I think to really explore this openly, and in an unbiased sense. We all have our biases, but it's terrifying because you're facing your worst fears. And I'd say over the last year, probably the year and a half after my dad died, which brings me up to almost present day, it was rough on me, dude, because I thought I had understood the world, and I had, like, here's my worst case scenario, and I always kept that in a box. When my dad died, that box blew up in my face. So I said, you know what? I can give up or I can face it. And I almost lost, dude, but I felt like, I stared my demons right in the face, and I allowed myself to be as scared as I possibly could, because I wanted to understand it and I wanted to find a way to make it better. I don't have that answer yet, but I'm a lot more optimistic than I was. Like I said before, I thought, we're all screwed, man. There's nothing we can do, but let me at least figure this out, because I'm not going down in a fight. But I'm an investigator. I've got a lot of experience as an investigator. So I look at it, I don't have a scientific mind, but investigators prove things all the time by gathering facts and different types of evidence. Unlike a scientist, they want to be able to show you the formulas and the scientific proofs. I can't do that, but I can present a pretty
You
solid
can give an
case.
account. You
Right,
can give a
exactly.
narrative, which is
Exactly.
I was just
So-
talking to. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're fine. You didn't.
I was just, somebody was asking a question on Facebook about like nature versus nurture type thing, like about economics, like or about politics and economics, about like, because they're like an anarchist, and they were asking, are people innately or inherently, like, do they innately inherently need like a state or a government?
Uh-huh.
And it's sort of like the same, like people say yes, people have to have a state or whatever. And like when I was more of a Marxist in the past, they used to say, well, like people are innately greedy and competitive. So, your idea of everybody sharing everything, that'll never happen. And so I was just going through, I'm like, well, both sides, it's kind of like, it's too extreme. Like we don't really know where humanity can go. Like I think it's safe to say that there's tendencies to both compete and cooperate. But the evolutionary biologists who study like evolution, how the account they'll make of what we call morality, what we'll call like love. Like my dog loves me. My dog would die to protect me, and I would die to protect that dog. And that's between two different species.
Yep.
But like, especially within a species, it's like what they'll say is that we, you know, if the world had been in a different way, if the conditions had been different, and it would have made more, like there would have been more survival value for all of us to be ruthless individuals, then that's what would have happened. But groups of species and groups of organisms, when they loved each other, and therefore they would look out for each other and help each other and defend each other and feed each other and raise each other and nurture each other and teach each other, they survived better than other groups who did it.
Right.
And I don't find that sufficient. I do not find that sufficient. I do not believe that my conscience, that my desire to love, like, and I do not find your desire to understand the suffering your father went through and to understand the own pain that you faced in the face of that suffering. I do not find that to be an accident of survival. I mean, perhaps that was the mechanism. Maybe it helps that as well. But just because it helps us survive doesn't mean it doesn't have another purpose. It doesn't, or it doesn't have another cause. And that cause is what I would find to be the saving grace, that there might not be this discrete entity who can control and change outcomes for us on this planet, but we have the virtues that we often want to ascribe to gods or a god. Now, we might not be able to effectively always put them into action because, like how we started off, I'm just a human, so I'm like prone to frailty. But the very fact that I can conceive of being a better person, that I have an idea of what it means to be better, to be a moral person, to try to reduce other people's suffering, that to even die so that another person doesn't have to suffer, to even sacrifice my own life or even my own well-being, to even invite suffering onto myself so that other people don't have to suffer. I believe that that is the divine, what gets called the divine, or something that's similar to the divine, and it possibly could coexist with as the kind of the duality or the polar opposite of, you know, the negative forces you're talking about.
You know, I've had a couple experiences over the past few weeks where I started exploring another thought recently, and I haven't spoken about it yet, but I got they call it an attunement, but I learned Reiki about a month ago now. I love it. It's pretty awesome. It's an energy healing practice. I've seen some pretty cool results since I've gone through the training program. But the guy that was my teacher, somebody said, well, what is Reiki? You know, it's like, it means like life energy. There's a couple different translations for it. But he said, well, Reiki is the Holy Spirit. I'm immediately turned off just because Christianity makes me uncomfortable.
Sure.
You know, but that was such a powerful statement because growing up, I had no idea what the Holy Spirit was. I went through all the sacraments. I received the Holy Spirit when I made my confirmation. Had no idea what it was. They said, well, it's the Spirit of God. And what the hell is it? I don't have any clue what that means.
What will it feel like when I feel it?
But now, understand, like I viewed before, I used to sit there and go, I don't like to use the term God. I had to use it in my book because it's a common understanding for things. But I don't personally refer to anything as God because I feel that the term has been corrupted, and I never understood why. My first time talking about this publicly, really. So if the thoughts sound garbled, we'll get through it. But I started thinking that I really think that the term God and the term creator have been confused because I don't think that they're one and the same. We believe God is this all-powerful being, the source of all creation, and, you know, goes on and on and on. Well, I think that's confusing a couple things. I think that there may be something that is divine, meaning it's more advanced than we are, that had a hand in the creation of this planet. Maybe there was just something that seeded the earth. Maybe there's something that had more of a direct intervention that some theories will tell you, you know, modified ape to make it man. There's a whole bunch of theories. I think that is more of what people think of when they think of God as a creator. Took the rib from Adam to make Eve, created the garden. You know, Ray Davis, we had on last week. We talked about that last week with his show and some of Sitchin's work and Robert Morningsky and some other researchers and Michael Tessarian, big researchers that talk about this theory. So that was I think where our current concept of God came out of those creation myth stories. There's many of them. But this, what the Native Americans call the Great Spirit, what the Christians call the Holy Spirit, what the Chinese call Qi, life energy. I think that's really the source that we refer to, that there's a life force, and in
I
Star Wars
agree.
they call it the Force. I've experienced that. I think that's what caused me to write my initial essay called I Am Human back in 2009. I experience it more and more because I've realized that this force, this energy, this universe doesn't speak English. It speaks in signs, symbols, and emotion. And when we can open ourselves up and learn to listen to it, you gain a lot of information and insight and knowledge from it. So when he said the Holy Spirit, something resonated in me, not from a Christian vantage, but I mean, it amazed Joel. It amazed me. It amazed me that concept going, yeah, so that is more what I think the force that everybody prays to and wants to be, this divine spirit. But I think this force is neither good nor bad. And I think from some of the things that I've read, a theory that I'm exploring is that what if this thing just created everything out of itself to learn? It just wants to learn about itself.
Sure.
Well, the only way you can learn about yourself is if you explore all aspects of yourself. Good, evil, dark, light. So that's what I mean when I say I think everything that's good or evil is two sides of the same coin. And really, we may just be a small piece of a greater whole just trying to understand existence. If you think of a computer program sending out bits of data to gather information, then we die, we go back to the source and deliver that information. That's kind of what goes through my head now with what this, creation and spirit and all that stuff is. Did that come out clearly?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I've read and studied a lot of ideas that were really similar, and like what I was arguing isn't new or novel either. Although I think we can definitely go too far in ascribing like sinister and evil, destructive, like energies or motives to certain patterns. I think we can also underestimate that stuff, and that was my takeaway. And I'm sure you're comfortable with people getting different takeaways from what you wrote.
Yeah.
But my takeaway was that, like, I agree with you to a certain extent, but I think sometimes, a lot of people who are in, and I'm not saying your position was a new age position, but there are people that come from a new age position who might argue something similar to what you argued. And I've been critical of this idea of privilege in the past because I think it's just thrown around. But sometimes when you're suffering is the variety of suffering that is kind of like, first world suffering, and you just, you've had a like, you middle class, upper class suffering, like you've had a great job, but it's unfulfilling. You know what I mean? Like you've not had, not you, but someone hasn't had like the most amazing relationships. Like the relationships have seemed hollow and empty. And I don't mean to mock these people because people's problems are these problems, but sometimes you see that the fact that they come from a certain level of comfort and luxury and power and privilege compared to most of the rest of the world and most of human history, the type of spirituality that comes out from that seems just kind of lukewarm. It's just like, everybody's, I'm fine, you're fine. We just all think positive thoughts, and you kind of criticize that. And that's where I took away that there's phenomenon. And some of them just might be natural, like you said, and maybe we can't quite comprehend them because we're scared. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like if we are all energy and we go back to a source, maybe you will be reunited with your loved ones, and maybe it won't be reunited in the way that we think. Maybe we won't be conscious the way we're conscious. But if we knew that today, maybe we wouldn't feel as disturbed by the suffering that we experienced and the loss and the loss of our loved one, or the impending loss of our loved ones, because we all have to say goodbye at some point. But there are other things that are just, it's like I do believe that something may have created this out of itself, but I think that there's something that just yearns for nothingness, that yearns for emptiness, that yearns for the cold. And you talked about like this energy, like parasite taking. At first, I'm like, I don't know about that, but then I thought about my bouts with depression. Right. And I thought about like just my energy just going low, and I fight it every day, man. Every day, like my energy's so low. I just can't. and it's not rational because there's so much to live for, and I fight my way through it. But then other times I get these bursts of energy and positivity, and
When
some
it's
of it's
full.
just natural.
No, Joel, I hear you. I think about that. I mean, we've spoken a lot about mental health and depression and all that stuff, and this stuff is what goes through my head. Like, what if something is really feeding off of it and draining
Yeah,
people and causing them to feel this way? And and I've listened to some people talk about, it's like a broken record in my head. I had the same thoughts going through my head all the time, and with the research coming out that we're living in a digital universe, I think computers have given us more of a language to understand some of this stuff. I'm not saying it's
sure.
necessary, but they're saying we're living in a computer simulation. That's a theory that's being thrown around by some top scientists now. So, with that being true, then would it not be possible to have if they say that the brain waves have been mapped where you can, pretty much read brain thoughts electronically now in certain technological circles, that we're not privy to. But if that's possible, then is it not possible if it's just an electrical signal in your brain to send and transmit and receive different things? Well, what if there's something that's on repeat saying, I'm an asshole, I'm a jerk, I'm a jerk, I'm a
Yeah,
jerk.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Because when I've been depressed, that's what it is. It's just a loop. And I've heard other people describe it. It's like this loop plays through your head over and over and over and over again. And some people, it takes them too far and they end up taking their own lives, So I just wonder, is there a more rational explanation other than your brain chemistry is off? Or maybe that's a symptom, not the cause, your
sure,
brain chemistry
sure.
being off. You know what I mean? So I hear you. And I wanted to make one more point. We're coming up pretty much out of time, but you had talked about hardship and suffering in this world, and this is what goes through my head too is there's a lot of growth that does come out of our struggle and our hardship, and
Absolutely.
I want the utopia, but I don't know that I would want it if I didn't have the hardship and the challenge. You know what I mean? But I don't want this hardship. I don't. And that's why I try to look at the bigger picture. Like, well, what if our purpose is to learn? Well, really, the only way you can learn is if you're challenged. Because if you're not challenged, you're going to sit around, make babies all day, and be happy. Which, hey, sign me up for that any day. That's not, that's not bad. It's not a bad deal. But you're not going to learn anything. You're not going to grow because you're not going to be challenged to grow. Think about,
That's true.
why did we harness the power to make fire? Because we were cold. We meaning mankind. We were cold. We wanted to be warm, so we had to find a way to keep warm. So we learned to build fire. If we lived in Florida where it was hot all the time, we'd have no need for fire. We'd just be eating plants and raw meat.
Hmm.
But just a thought. Several thoughts, obviously, but
Well, I don't think this is a novel idea either, but I'll just throw it out there. Like when you talked about the creator, like if something creates something else, that assumes that time is linear. That time, like, A follows B. But if time
right.
isn't what we think it is, maybe we're in the process of becoming God ourselves.
Oh God, you had to go there. I don't think that time is linear. If you read, I'm a big fan of Robert Monroe and his work out of the Monroe Institute. I read Far Journeys about a month ago. I put that on your must-read file if you're interested in consciousness studies. And there's other people that talk about time is only linear, really, to us. And it's that time relativity. I don't, kind of, not really, but have you seen the movie? And I'm not going to get too far into it, but have you seen the movie Interstellar?
Yes.
Joel, I cried for an hour. I watched it 2 nights ago. I cried for an hour afterwards because
Great movie.
it hit home on so
many
many
levels.
different levels, and I know that writer, they understand something because it just so many little synchronicities that I haven't spoken about publicly that I haven't put in the book. But I was like, that's my life. Oh my gosh! I mean, I'm not a spaceman traveling the world, but the other stuff, man, just hit me so hard. So, yes, if time is not linear, which I don't think that it is, I think our perception of time is linear, then yes, maybe we are becoming gods. Maybe we are in that process of evolution. And maybe when we die, we get to come back in a different form to
Right.
help improve this incarnation.
Exactly.
So I could have several other existences. I could live this life now, die, and then my next life will be in the 1800s. I don't know. But there's a lot of research out there that talks about that possibility. So my hope with I Am Human is that people read it and start to have these exact discussions with an open mind that you're having and start challenging some of these doctrines that I think keep us locked in a cycle of hate. I think conflict may be necessary, but the suffering that we're seeing in this world isn't. And I think if we start with really looking at ourselves and understanding who we are, and when I started realizing, man, I may be nothing more than food for something. Well, I have a lot more respect for the food that I eat right now, and I'm more of an advocate for treating our livestock in a humane way.
Yeah, tell me about it.
If we start viewing the world that way, we're going to hopefully start treating our fellow man that same way, and that could move us towards a much happier, healthier society. As of right now,
Absolutely.
we still have to kill things to live, no matter how you look at it. I wish I could change that, but I can't. But I think we can do much better than we're doing. So whether you buy into all some of the extreme stuff in this book or not, I think it can start a dialogue towards bringing about real change, hopefully in the world. Now, every writer hopes that his book's going to have that kind of impact, but I believe in what I wrote. I really do. So I hope that people pick it up. You can get it for free, again, at serviceofchange.com/IamHuman. And you can get it on Amazon. There's links, in the newsletter that comes out to you where you can get it for $6.99 in a paperback. It's a beautiful book. So I think we're just about out of time. Joel, I appreciate you allowing me to get into this tonight. It's a very personal project for me, and it's one that I think you and I have been slowly building me up to be able to comfortably talk about this for almost a year, I would say, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and it turned out that it's not as controversial as you. It's only controversial to people who, they've had their belief systems they've settled them.
Right.
They have them settled, and that's okay. But then they just don't have to listen. They don't have to respond with mockery or derision.
Now, if they want to respond with constructive criticism or with hey, this contradicts what you're saying, please do email me. Dennis, Nappii @gmail.com. I encourage my readers to respond to my newsletters and stuff because I'm writing another book, and I want I want the most accurate information I can possibly get. So I encourage you to respond to me if you have a difference of opinion. Don't send me hate mail. Don't tell me I'm an idiot. But if you have some legitimate, I'm trying to learn. I'm not sitting here saying my book is right. I don't care if I'm right. I care that we find a better way. And if this starts that discussion, then great. I'm not trying to be controversial. I know that sells sometimes too, but that's not my goal. But yeah, I think my apprehension was because it tends to be a taboo subject a lot of times. So I hope I helped bridge that a little bit.
Yeah, you did. And like I said, these are all accounts. Since humans could first begin to articulate if the story that they tell us about that we, evolve speech or whatever, evolve language, we've been telling each other stories around the fire at night to, to help us understand this phenomenon called being alive, being human. We've been telling each other stories, and just to arbitrarily break these stories into either they're true or they're false is just such a false dichotomy. There's such a range there.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right, but that's how we tend to look at things.
And it depends. Yeah, right. And there's context, and it's so I think you're struggling with the give an account. You know what I mean? And that's what I've been trying to do my entire life. I want to give an account, so that's why I've been all over the place all my life, trying to explore different ways people try to give accounts. What stories do we tell each other and tell ourselves? About what it is that we do here. That's where I've been everywhere. I've been around all different types of people and explored the whole range from being an atheist to being a Christian to being a Marxist to being a libertarian. I've tried to explore it all because I want what you want, which is to learn. Like you said, that ethic, to learn and to grow. And
yep, that's the goal, Joel. And it's tough. And I keep saying, why can't I just settle on something and be content and just chill the rest of my life? That's what I want sometimes, but. And I love the Matrix for what, the thoughts they inspired in me, but he says it's the question that drives us. And it is. I don't have an answer to that question. Usually I get more and more questions with everything I think I figure out,
Yeah, and that's in your nature. And I think, maybe you've been chosen for that reason.
I don't know. I don't know. That's a whole other discussion, I guess. Fate versus free will.
Right.
Which I struggle with. I struggle with that a lot, so. But that's a discussion for another show. I think we went a little bit over, but again, I appreciate you taking the time. Any final thoughts, Joel, before I wrap up the show?
Just check out the book, everyone. It's definitely stimulating and it's well written.
Thanks, Joel. Appreciate that.
Sure.
All right, so I want to say thank you to Joel for allowing me to delve into this tonight, and for also reading it in advance and giving me some feedback before I put it out. And thank you to my editors, Lori Latimer did an excellent job editing it, and to my mom, Vicky Nappi, who was also an editor on this book, and she, was there throughout, the majority of this journey, and has always been somebody that I've spoken to this stuff about. So I'm very thankful, Mom, and to my brother Mike Nappi also. He's been a voice of reason and also read the book in advance. So. If there's anybody I'm missing, my deepest apologies. I'm just trying to rush through the show, but it's been a great project, a fun project, and I'm getting ready to jump back into the other book that I had to stop writing in order to write this one. So now I think a little bit more grounded and ready to finish telling that story. So thank you very much. Check out this book. You can read it for free. serviceofchange.com/IamHuman. You will have an opportunity to receive a free copy, autographed copy by me. If you write a review on Amazon.com, send me an email of that review, and then next Saturday I will be picking a name at random out of a hat and sending off a free copy to one lucky winner. So, again, thank you to all my listeners out there. I appreciate you all with the support that you've been showing me for this project. I'm going to go ahead and close the show now. I'm Dennis Nappi II with Service of Change, where small changes among the masses can have a massive impact around the world. Be that change. Thank you.